curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious Conversation. Curious Conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to, I think this is going to be episode 3 or 4 of season 2 of Curious Conversations. I have 3 very special guests that I'm very excited to have on with us, and what I'm trying to get into the habit of with Curious Conversations is doing a bit of an intro for people. Usually I just throw it straight to the others. And the topic we're looking at today is the marriage between queerness and spirituality. And I'm just going to go around and give a little personal intro to each person and then let everyone go around and introduce themselves around their own queer journey and a brief queer journey and where that spirituality is being practiced in life now. So first I'm going to start off with Catherine, because I've known Catherine the longest. I met Catherine, I can't remember what year it was. It was maybe like 2019 or 18 or 17.
18,
who knows?
2018.
18, there we go.
Yeah.
And I was doing a course, becoming a spiral practitioner. And Catherine, along comes this human walking down with all this film gear while we're like in our lesson. And me and Alpha were like, damn, who dat? And you came in and me and Alpha instantly navigated to you during the lunch break, and we had a good little yarn. And then just over the years, we've just become closer and closer. You dated Alpha Mama for a while, and I called you to my mums, which was really cute. And then you and I talked a lot about queerness, and you also run a Queer and Clear podcast, which I've featured on. And I think we have this like mutual love for queerness and just love and magic all together. So I'm really excited to now swap over and have you on the podcast after you having me on yours. So this is Catherine. Actually, I'm going to do it so now you can do a little bit of intro of yourself, actually.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure. As Paisley said, we have a mutual love of queerness, and I would say our mutual love of fluidity and expression and expansion.
Yes.
I would say, I'm Australian. I currently live in Bali, Indonesia. I'm an experimenter of life. I would say primarily I'm an artist. So, I was a musician for a long time. I still am. I don't really perform anymore, but I used to. Currently obsessed with pole dancing. I'm like obsessed with pole dancing. Yes. I just want to be, my whole thing is like gathering skills, and particularly skills that allow me to express myself and all the things that come through me. Second to that, I would say I'm a very spiritual being, intuitive, psychic. I work a lot with energy. I ran my own kind of healing business for a year and a half. I'm sort of, a little bit dabbling in that these days. And yeah, woman-loving woman, but also gender fluid. I like to explore a wide range of expression. So I just want to be everything. Yeah.
Can relate. So next I'm going to go over to Hannah, which the most amazing thing is I was just reading your EPK beforehand, who is also known as Hanarchy. Is that correct? Yes. I was like, that is so punk. I'm here for it. So Hanarchy over here. We've not met in person, but we've been talking on the interwebs for like maybe 6 to 8 months. And how we got in touch, I think, is through Tian. I was up in Byron, and I think I was up for ISTA, which is like a school of sex and shamanism. It's like temple arts school. And I was like getting embedded into the ISTA crew. And I think I was the only queer male in that sort of area. There's obviously been other queer men in ISTA, but in that certain segment, I was starting to initiate certain men into the queerness. And then Tian's like, there's this whole like super dope spiritual queer crew in Byron, and I think he put you and I in touch. also maybe your roommate Brendan, if that's right. And we are meant to link up, but it didn't end up happening. But I've been watching what you do, and there's these super beautiful series that you do on queer intimacy, photography that I just drool over. And there's so much more epic work that you're doing. So I'd love for you to share with the people who you are and what you do.
Cool. Thanks, Paisley. Well, first things first, you can't see my shirt, but this is me loving the Queer Club.
Yes.
Gangster. So obviously I share my mutual love for queerness with all of you. Yeah, I suppose queer photography is definitely something that I so deeply desired doing. You know, I love watching people express themselves. And when it's, you know, with more skin on skin erotica, then why not be there as a comfortable person that can, you know, go in there and be able to share that to the wider world. So queer photography is definitely something that I love to do as a queer woman. I also just started doing carpentry as of late, and it's my dream to build a sauna.
Yes.
I also define myself definitely as an entrepreneur because I have made a product called the Good Lighter. I have one
product placement. Do it. Yes.
Product placement.
Yes.
Having trouble losing your lighter? You'll never lose it again with this Good Lighter.
Which you also make as a necklace.
It actually comes as a necklace. I don't have that in front of me, but it does come as a necklace, which it did start off originally as just a party tool. And then as my spirituality and understanding of myself deepened, then so did the product, and it became a lot more about a ritualistic way to hold fire. So the Good Lighter definitely keeps me busy. I definitely feel as if my angle of healing modality is coming through breath work and facilitating breath work for people. That's how I stay connected to spirit. That's how I help other people do that as well. But I'm just somewhat the same as what Catherine said and what you've also said with regards to just wanting to be everything and continue to get as many skills as possible to expand the horizon. I've definitely tried pole dancing, but only once, Catherine, because I got bruises on my legs and I felt very unsexy myself personally. But that's mainly because I grew up more of like, you know, a basketballing tomboy than a pole dancing gal. But, you know, it's cool. I'm always keeping it open. But yeah, I suppose that's me for now.
Epic. Thank you. And last is Terrell, who I have only been like over the last few months sort of silently stalking on the Instagram platforms. I'm like, who's this? Like, especially because you were in Sydney beforehand. I just would you pop up in my Explorer every once in a while with like tarot cards and these epic like backdrops, like Photoshop, epic, like spiritual designs, but with this like queer fluidity around it, very sensuous. I was like, all right. And I just like was saving a few posts here and there. And I was like, I don't know how this person's going to navigate into my world, but I'm just going to keep an eye. And then I went to the most recent Leak Your Own Nudes. I think I saw you there and I was like, hey, it's that guy. And I pointed you out to a friend of mine, Alpha, who we spoke of earlier. And I was like, all right, I'm going to hit him up at some point and get him on the podcast. So I'm really grateful to have actually connected with you and actually get to just learn more about you through here. But what I do see is you're really tapped in with tarot and that you're a mindset coach and that you really have your queerness at the forefront, which I think is super beautiful because I don't see that. I really don't see that in those areas, especially around mindset coach. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to make my silent stalking now a very public figure right now.
For sure. I love that. I do pop in and out of spaces. So I do a lot, I think, like we all do. And for me, where I'm moving into, especially with mindset, is really understanding our background and how we navigate the world in the way that we see ourselves. And for me, you know, my queerness, it was something that I leaned into or grew into. I think especially it's really funny because I'm now in my hometown, as you would say. I moved here when I moved to Atlanta when I was 16, and was just coming out and figuring everything out and exploring. In the South is a very it's a dynamic and chaotic space. But you know, so right now, currently, I'm working a lot with the mindset and how we manifest, and really bringing a grounded perspective to manifestation. Because a lot of times when people say manifest, it becomes this airy fairy magic space, which I think it is, but also giving people the tools to create from a space of power, and to own who they are, right? And I think at the end of the day, when we think about queerness, right, it's really being able to, I think, just stand in your own space and be your own thing. Hannah, I did a photo shoot for The Good Lighter, and so it's really nice to put a face.
Ah,
Yeah, so it all feels really aligned and connected. And yeah, I think in my space right now, it's really looking at queers and saying like, hey guys, we it's time to stand up. It's time to move in your own space, create your own thing, embrace who you are, and facilitate that. I do breath work, meditations, and I offer hypnotherapy, hypnosis, and a lot of other different kind of things that I just
hey.
love.
Nice. So there's definitely a common thread right now that we all just want to do absolutely everything in all the healing modalities and forms of creativity and forms of gender expression. I think that's really important to have that fluidity in this space and seeing the ways we can weave it throughout this conversation. And where I think is most important to start the conversation would be, for me, is like obviously queerness. We're continuing to have an uprising, and there's been obviously years and years of, you know, not as bright times, and a lot of people still hold that quite dearly in their, or not dearly, they hold that quite traumatically within their body. Like the conditioning is generational, and it seems like a thread between us all is by finding personal development, finding spirituality, is how we've been able to shine and show up and be a voice and be an inspiration to others that may not actually have that same privilege of connecting with these tools, connecting with these higher sources that are gonna have this uplifting effect on life, so it doesn't feel like a burden to be queer, when that's like, in objectively that's not the truth, but subjectively some people do feel that. So, and this, moving forward, this is probably mostly going to be popcorn style, so whoever feels to just answer any of this, I'm curious to hear where these two became married, the queerness and spirituality. Because for myself, it was my spiritual journey and my personal development journey that goes, oh, like, because of with spirituality, it wasn't like I was Buddhist or Tao or Christian or Muslim or anything. I was navigating through all kinds of spirituality. So I found that fluidity, and then my gender started doing that. And then I was like, oh, sexually, I can also be a bit more fluid and find love in all areas. I'm curious to hear what came first for both, for all three of you, and yeah, how you're currently navigating that up until now.
Yeah, so I think for me, in the way, if I'm looking at it, you know, from a bird's eye perspective, and being queer is more than perhaps my sexuality. It's really how I move around the world, and something that I think really called to me. I'll say I think my queerness came first, but in this weird space of like figuring myself out, spirituality began to unfold too. Moving again, the way that I had to engage and interact and create space and understand like how I fit in the world, I didn't really connect with I call it like capital G gay kind of crowd. I didn't really fit in there. And I really did gravitate towards the more alternative queer spaces. I had friends from all walks of life and who allowed me to try different things and express myself in new ways. And I think that's where my queer identity really started to expand and come to fruition. Now, the more that I grew into that and the more that I traveled and moved to different spaces, I ended up moving to New York, and that opened up a whole new space as I leaned into tarot and really starting to engage with my inner dialogue, my intuition, my guidance, and moving into that. And I did breath work for the first time in 2014, and that changed my whole trajectory. And I switched gears and moved all over the place and have just been snowballing in that effect. And so spirituality definitely started to grow as I, in my queerness, allowed myself to really explore and expand in that space.
Beautiful. Yeah, I like that you started that off as queerness is more than your sexuality, because I feel like I was queer before I was ever with a man, like someone of the same sex. I maybe didn't understand that as a label, I was alternative, or I was quirky, or I was fluid in areas, but that's what I consider queerness as well, is that it's more than just sexuality. So I love that you covered that there. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, with regards to the queerness not just being about your sexuality. For me, I feel definitely like I was capital L lesbian before I was, but I definitely didn't get down with the term at all. To me, the term was really it just had one view. Like, if you were one of those people, then you had a shaved head, you had tattoos everywhere, you were this really stereotypical dyke, and I found that I really didn't connect with what that label actually was. I was also raised Jewish, so the sort of self-hatred of the fact that I was going to come out in the first place had like the double layer of religion to it. And then when I did come out, which is hilarious now to even talk about the term of coming out, because it's just like the new little indigo kids at 11 are just like, Mom, I've got a girlfriend, Mom, I've got a boyfriend, Mom, this. It's like just so beautiful to see. But yeah, I didn't come out until about 21. And yeah, I feel like I definitely didn't have a hard time loving the fact that I was coming out at that time. I definitely found spirituality afterwards, with the help of psychedelics, which was, played a really big part in spirituality. But for me, it was actually recognizing that at the crux of spirituality is, love-centered and truth-centered and soul-centered. And that's also what queerness is too, because you have to be authentic about who you love. At the end of the day, it is about love and it is about your truth, so I found that the two things were just really not even separate, because also the spirituality really shows you too how much you have the masculine and feminine inside of you. And that's so much about what queerness is to me as well, as it's bending between all of those as a spectrum.
Yeah, epic. I want to go more into that, but I'm going to let Catherine go first, because yes, that fluidity within masculine and feminine, and that as an energy and not a gender, is something I want to go into.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yes.
As well. So I mean, my sexuality and spirituality have always been innately linked. I initially in my teens got really into like the Christian youth group at school, which ironically I think I had a crush on one of the girls there, which is why I was there. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just obsessed with this girl at church and I was like, I'm going to youth group. But then I got conditioned. I got really conditioned and I was like, oh God. And so, yeah, that kind of carried through even after I left church when I was like 21. It's just, I was disconnected from my sexuality at that point and like quite repressed. But then fast forward to like 2015, I discovered a form of Tantra, basically, feminine embodiment. And it was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say, like, look into your body for the answers, listen to your womb. I was like, who listens to their womb? Apparently me, because then it was through that experience that I was like, ba-bing, like, I'd been in love with my best friend who was a woman for like 2 years at this point, and I was just like, ding, I was like, whoa. I just suddenly realized what was happening. And yeah, once I realized that, and once I started to really tune into my body through that sort of tantric practice of, you know, going into form and emotions and sexuality to sort of transcend and, you know, connect with spirit, it was, you know, game over for me. And then that, you know, for a period of time, I was like identifying as bisexual, still dating men. And then last year I had another layer of that kind of like emerge from my body. It was just like this energy came up and through me while I was doing some work with my coach, Perry Chase. Just one day it was a similar thing, like this energy came up and it was like, you're gay. You're gay. And I was like, whoa. Okay, so I ran with that. But you know, for me the two are so linked, and I love to move between, you know, the two ends of the spectrum, like oneness consciousness, we are everything and everyone, and, you know, love and all of this, and we're all spirit, we're all, you know, androgynous and this, and then coming into my body and being just so like primal, animal, female, but sometimes kind of male. It's like this fun interplay between the two, and then, you know, the masculine and feminine as well, and the interplay. I'm all about it.
So another common thread that's come up here is like for you to, I don't know where you are on the screen or mine, but for Hannah and Catherine was religion, like, as also at play, not only just society overall, but then religion was another layer that you had to come through. So you went through a form of spirituality, then out, then back into spirituality. And I guess another thing that come up is like asking this question of what came first, spirituality or queerness. It's sort of like more so, what did you identify as first, or what did you like come out as first, or whatever you want, however you want to frame it, because have all always been spiritual beings and have always been queer beings at the same time, and maybe they're the same thing is what we'll come to by the end of this. And I'm curious, like, so for myself, I didn't have any of that. Like, for majority of my life up until like 23, I'm just a straight white male. I'm pretty privileged in this container. And I'm curious for you, Terrell, for people that are listening, you have a darker pigment than the rest of us. I'm curious what your background is and how that plays into your journey with queerness and spirituality.
Yeah, you know, I definitely consider, I mean, especially in like the US, I've always considered myself Black. And I grew up in Hawaii, and I feel like that gave me a different self-concept, especially around skin color and race and identity. Hawaii is, it's a brown space, and it's a melting pot, as you know, everybody is everything. And I never really had to think about my race as identity until I moved to Atlanta at 16 years old, when I realized, okay, I'm definitely different than most Black people because I grew up on an island. And I was very much into the rave scene and No Doubt and Sublime. And, I just had a different vibe about me. And that's always stayed with me. And I think, especially when you start to drop in sexuality and where that comes in, I, again, kind of struggled with connecting with the crew that I was maybe. I think when you're younger, you don't really have the. Oftentimes, for me, I'm just going to speak for myself. So when I was younger, I didn't really have the modeling, right? I didn't really know any other queer brown people. I didn't really know any other spiritual brown people. The spirituality was religion, right? Like that was the only thing that I really knew. When somebody said something about spirituality, if you would have asked the 17, 18-year-old me, I would have totally just thought you were talking about Christianity, Catholicism, any of that kind of space. But as I started meeting more people, I think, again, deciding, I think that's what it is too. Just kind of deciding not to let my skin color maybe dictate how I move about the world, and really creating that identity and allowing and just deciding that I was going to do what I wanted to do anyway. I created this personality, and I think there aren't a lot of brown people. I mean, now I'm starting to see a lot more brown people in the spiritual space, like real spiritual space, where it is, like we're talking about connecting with the universe, connecting with earth, connecting with others, connecting with our bodies. I tell a lot of my clients, what is your relationship with your body? If your body was a separate entity, what is your relationship to it? And from my own experience, it was creating a relationship with my body and telling myself new stories about what this skin color meant, right? Like what it was worthy of, what it deserved, and what I was capable of, because of the messaging that I received being so young. I really had to push against that and decide that I was going to do something else, or be something else, or go somewhere else, So I don't know, hope that answered.
Yes, you definitely answered. Cool. So yeah, there was an awareness journey of color, but it was quite like you're in a melting pot of lots of people in Hawaii. But then when you went to Atlanta, it was like, okay, I'm a different kind of black to here, right? And the cultural differences, but then eventually just reeling back to like, yes, that is a part of me, but it's not my forefront. It's not gonna be any extra benefit or detriment to my journey as a spiritual being is essentially
absolutely.
where you went. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I'm curious, like, while we're sort of on this like identity topic right now of religion, color, queerness, is as people, we're all facilitators and creating processes for people. Do all of you exclusively work with queer people, or are you open to all walks of life? And even if you are open to all walks of life, do you happen to call in more people that are like yourself, and what you're getting from those differences when you're facilitating experiences, if any?
I tend to attract female-bodied people, but not exclusively. And I don't say it explicitly in the work that I teach. I'm open to anyone. However, there's kind of an energetic boundary around cis men who want to hit on me, or have that kind of like more, because some of the work I do is around pleasure and sexuality, obviously. And so I know some of my audience are like cis men who are just here for the goods. That's fine, but there's just kind of an unspoken barrier there.
They're just allowed to watch from afar. They're not allowed in
like
in
if
the
they
fortress.
genuinely wanted to come and do the work and they weren't about like making a connection there, sure, for sure, but that just doesn't seem to come up very often. But I work with straight and queer people.
And do you find a difference in how it resonates with you, or how you're delivering the work when it comes to the differences in, for example, straight and queer?
For sure. The more queer out there I am, the more queer people I attract. It's just seems to be a reflection, for sure. Yeah.
I find it like, I don't know, I definitely attract more of a female audience. I do have, I've worked with males, I've worked with trans bodies, but I think in the space that I'm in, it is more of a, a female orientated space. I would love, and I think that's something to really dive into, where more queer males are and what they're doing, and really speaking to them and saying, maybe not telling them, but just offering more. I think in the space that we're in, sometimes females are more in tune to the body, more in tune to the cycles, more in tune to the universe. And I think that masculine energy can be very just like work, kind of bulldoze your way through things. And oftentimes that doesn't really attract. Now, I do know there are male spaces for that, very masculine male spaces, who love like breath work, the Wim Hof method. A lot of that I see just like is hyper masculine, where I don't really feel super comfortable in that space, or even leading a group like that. And I think that's my own shadow that I have to understand. But yeah,
is that fireworks for 4th of July going off right now? Is that what's happening?
That's exactly what's happening.
That's amazing.
What a fun addition to this conversation.
I love that. They're celebrating your shadow descent. Like, I think that's my shadow.
Integrate your shadow. Yeah, so that's been my experience, and I welcome everyone though. I think like Catherine, the more I show up in my queer body, the more queer bodies I attract, and that's energy, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to jump on that whilst we're still talking about it, because I definitely have been working more with female bodies, feel more comfortable doing so. But, because this is all about also our own work first, and the more that we do the work, the more that we can show up for other people, realizing how important it is for me to actually work with men, cis men, not the comfortable, more feminine, really easy to approach men. And actually that a big part of my journey to, I suppose, heal my own inner masculine and not have so much, I suppose, judgment personally, which I can have sometimes, means that I actually have to work more with men so that I can be, so that can help in my healing also. So that's sort of something that I've been purposefully trying to minimize, that energetic barrier that Catherine was kind of talking about, because I can really have that, especially with more cis men, where I can sort of radiate a little bit of, a bit of fuck you, just a little bit, which isn't personal. It's probably more the patriarch, but still, always got to realize where it's coming from, and be able to, pull apart your own work to be a better facilitator, healer, person generally. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in for me, because that's been my journey as of late.
Yeah, it's very fascinating you bringing that up. And again, for myself, like curating clients and having my audiences in my day-to-day life, I feel like I'm a bit more like on the mask. Like I'm quite a grot in real life, and I'm like very boyish, manly, blokey at times. But the way I love to present on social media and the art I like to create, and aesthetically, I love like very femme, soft, sensuous kind of things. And I can see it, especially now having a boyfriend. I'm just like, I can see my demographic of straight men just going down and down and down and down. I'm like, no, I love working with straight men actually though. But I'm trying to figure out how to present myself more like I am in my day-to-day life, and in comparison to what I aesthetically and visually artistically like to present on, this canvas called social media. So that's a curious one. And I have that bug within me, like you're saying, Hannah, of like, it's my fluidity thing, is like I can never niche into one little area, and it's like if I can see myself navigating away, it's like there's a little bit of stuff going on over here that I'm trying to avoid. And it definitely comes with my queerness as well. Like the more I post stuff with my boyfriend, or like this really like queer centric art, is like yeah, no, they're not. It's me projecting it automatically. They don't want to work with me because it doesn't relate to them. It's like, well, I'm curating that narrative right now by leaning into it. So how can I again energetically open myself up to calling these men in? Because more than anything, I want to be able to help deliver that feminine balance to men who are quite hyper masculine, and at the same time receive a bit of a transmission of their like deep masculinity. So I think that's a really cool thing that you bring up.
Yeah, I think especially on the the topic of queerness, right? Like when we think about being queer, like it's really being able to navigate both ends, right? The femininity, the masculinity. I think we all, I not think, but I very much believe we all have those innate, the innate ability to access, utilize, possess, use, show that whole spectrum, right? And you're exactly right. Like feeding into, I think that narrative back there that says, "Oh, I'm showing up this way," and so that is maybe putting a barrier between the people that I do want to work with, instead of maybe even just talking, using that, right? And talking to that and saying, I'm showing up as my most authentic self. These are my stories, or this is the experience that I'm coming through. Who else kind of feels that way? Because I know that there are a lot of queer men who aren't necessarily on the gay spectrum, or, maybe not even identify on that kind of in that space, but they do like to show different sides of themselves and experience different bodies, but feel that they can't really express themselves, and that there isn't a place or space for that. So I think social media can be super weird and strange sometimes, where we do feel like we box ourselves into this thing in this space, and all of a sudden you see followers fall off, and you see people jump in, and you don't really know where to navigate. But at the end of the day, it's like showing up and just being like, hey, I'm going to give you everything, right? And
yeah, I feel like that's a big thing, like especially in our generation, is social media, and just how that's really allowed us to, the quote unquote coming out process, which to some people is very real, and to some people these days is like doesn't exist. But I feel like with social media, there's a deeper ability to have that vulnerability of just showing exactly who you are, without having any kind of like availability to physical violence or emotional violence so close to. And I'm curious about everyone's journeys in showing up in, like, say, if we're going to say queerness and spirituality as archetypes or as characters of ourself, because we are all fluid beings that are more than our sexuality and our spirituality, is how you've been able to come out over and over in new ways through social media.
It's a daily thing. It's a daily thing of coming out for me. My intention with my social media is literally to be as authentic as possible, and to sit in the discomfort of that. Sometimes I just use social media as a way to out myself over and over again. and to really, because I think I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, one of the biggest challenges in life in general is just like, how can I be myself and be with people's reaction or response to that? And so like recently, it's not even been so much about the queerness. but I made a shift from like focusing on, coaching and advice giving and sharing of that sort of stuff into just my own. I was like, I'm just going to do pole dancing and you're all going to hear about it. I'm just going to post photos of me doing cool things and talk about what I want to talk about and be completely self-indulgent. And, I've lost probably like 200 followers or something. And part of me goes like, oh, why? I'm cool. And then part of me is like, well, great. This is awesome. This is good juice. Like, let's keep going and see what happens. And yeah, I fucking love the interplay and the space that social media offers to out oneself in all the ways.
Yeah, well, that's a cool thing. Like, do you feel like because of coming out is so tied in with sexuality, do you feel like even as a pole dancer is a coming out process rather than it being anything to do with what gender you desire?
100%.
It's you're coming out as a pole dancer right now in so many different layers.
Yeah, there's a constant thing around, like I don't tell my mum, she might watch this, whatever. Mum, sorry. I was a stripper for like 3 months in 2017. And so like I've experienced that space with, primarily straight cis men, which I actually loved. At the time I was doing like kind of tantric, priestess training, and I was like, look, I'm going to take it into the mainstream. It's not kind of how it played out for real, but it was fun for a time. And so like when I post my body online, I'm really intimately aware of like how different people respond to that. And I find that a really interesting thing to explore for myself and for the space. And pole dancing obviously like showcases that. And the other part that I've been playing with in pole dancing is like I post things that aren't polished on purpose, because I know that, I follow so many pole dancers online. They're all amazing. And pole dancing is hard. As Han mentioned, I have bruises. I'm not good. I'm getting good now, like good, good-ish, kind of. Can hold myself on the pole if that's what good is after like 3 months of intensive training. And I just, again, like I love, I kind of trust that in my being myself, that some good is happening in the world. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm coming out as a pole dancer over and over again.
Epic. I love that.
I love
Yeah,
that.
well, you go, Terrell.
No, go ahead.
I actually just really am not as authentic as what I can be on social media at all. And it's not because I'm not, I suppose, authentic. I feel like of all the people around me, I'm constantly just expressing my shadow and my true authenticity with them all the time. So much so that they're just like, you're kind of like, this is really full on. I can come across sometimes really intense. But yeah, I feel like I would really like to move towards being more authentic. It's not more authentic, it's just sharing more, because I primarily have been using my personal page on Insta for photography. It's like they're just the photos and that's what it is. So I feel, yeah, definitely as I continue to do more work on myself and really feel into the things that I want to share, the more humanness aspects of myself and my journey, that will just come out automatically.
Beautiful. Yeah, and there's no terms and conditions that anyone has to share that on social media. And yeah, you are still being your most authentic self by sharing just the photos, and that's what it is, because of authentically that's what you're doing in the world, right? And you're just sharing that. And for anyone that's listening, we're all to some extent have an influence on social media, and in no way does anyone have to do anything that we're saying or doing to be authentic, but this is just our form of sharing our authenticity for sure.
Like it's so hard to it's already hard enough showing up daily or however often you do, like just doing the thing and putting out what you want to put out as like effortlessly as you can. is my MO. I mean, speaking of like coming out, right? And I've kind of navigated different realms of social media. I think I started off very body oriented and, really showing off my physique and things like that, and gained a following of, people who really were attracted to that physical aspect of me. And then coming out and creating more of a spiritual space, right? So, I mean, I came out when I was 17, so I never really had to come out on social media about being gay or anything like that, but I have been creating new spaces for myself and changing that, and yeah, you get a little, it is a little jarring when you start to see people who were following you not really appreciating the change and the shifts and the growing, right? But I also think, like Catherine, it's like, how do I lean into that? And if this is where I'm going, what am I doing it for, right? Because if I'm doing it just for, the aesthetic about it or whatever, like the follower count, and then that's not really being authentic. And I think that's where things really start to burn out. But again, in the space that we're in, we're all creatives, we're all healers, we're all healing, and I think sharing that. And it's not always going to be super pretty and polished and on point. And sometimes I think where we are collectively, people want to see that they can relate to you, right? I think some of the things that really connect me with people who do follow me and my followers and who I follow as well, is when we align on these things, like, oh, I'm having a really hard time with this thing in my life, right? Or I really feel like crap or whatever. And it's like, I don't think it's trauma bonding, but I think people want to know that, like, and they're not the only ones having things going on in their lives that aren't pretty.
Yeah, to go someone that, again, like having an influence, that this polished lifestyle that happens on Instagram, to every once in a while go, and my life is falling apart, and XYZ is really fucking me up right now. And people go, I needed this today. I needed to hear that that's what's happening for you as well, because it can relate to so many people. And that's what not only are we looking to inspire and plant new seeds of thought in people's minds, but just to also go, we're all human. We all go through things, to go, just have that collective deep breath of, right, like, let's continue this journey. And in that journey, I'm curious to hear then on the other side of, with being leaders in the spaces of queerness and spirituality, I'm curious to hear about any imposter syndrome that comes up around it, of like, fuck, who am I to tell people that they need to show up more authentic, or that they need to heal this, or that I'm the person that can hold that space for them as this person. I'm curious to hear where it's showed up in your life previously, and maybe anything that you're currently journeying now.
Yeah, I'm literally about to I'm doing a live about imposter syndrome, and in the space of like how to manifest, because I think if anybody ever says they don't experience imposter syndrome, I would not. I'd be really pressed to be like, yeah, I believe that. But like, for me, the imposter syndrome shows up a lot, especially when I'm doing something new, or when I'm not feeling like I'm succeeding at the rate that I expected. I think, I showed up in a space which was really jarring for me, because I feel like I've grounded in who I am, but I went out for the first time here, and I thought it was going to be this like wonderful queer party, and I showed up and it was not a queer party, and I was dressed very like me and just like, feeling myself. And I come in and it was like the music stopped and everybody just kind of like looking and like, who is he? And I'm sure they were like, who is that? But in my body, I was like, ooh, I haven't felt like this before. Like, what am I doing? Am I doing, you know, and then it just starts going into this whole narrative about like, who am I? how I'm showing up. And I think when I walked into this space, that imposter syndrome of being like, am I as confident as I thought I was? You know, am I really grounded and really sure of who I am? If something like that can set me back a little bit or knock me off my feet. But in that moment, you know, with the tools that I've gained over the years, I was able to, I guess, talk myself off the ledge, so to speak, or I just, you know, return to those positive aspects and really did the things that I teach my clients to do. And that helped me relax. It helped me just start to focus in on the people that I went there with. I could have a good time. And before I knew it, hours had passed by. I was engaging with people. And that moment of me walking through the door and feeling like, ooh, you know, that had disappeared, evaporated, and was gone. And I think sometimes when we look at imposter syndrome, it's like, how long do you let that stay? You know, how long? And so I don't know, imposter syndrome shows up for me in so many different ways but I do have to like talk myself back and say like, yo.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up around like, am I as confident as I think I am? Because on these, you know, myself as a social media person, like, and especially because I have no news feeds on social media, is I don't see what anyone else is doing. So I'm in this world that I spend a lot of time in, is like, I'm the brightest star in the room because there's just literally no one else except for just the people that follow me, right? So, but then I walk into another space and there'll be times where I don't, either like I'm just observing, or I don't feel like talking, or someone is shining quite bright, and then it's like, oh fuck, am I just like a made up character on social media? You know, like am I just a phony? Is this the imposter syndrome of like, I'm not even that quirky, I'm not even that creative, I'm not even that bright when it comes to real life, but then going, actually no, I just don't feel like being like, ta-da everyone, throwing glitter and making stupid jokes and whatnot. Like, I don't have to do that all the time, but then sometimes I do, you know, and maybe sometimes I walk in and I'm the main character immediately, other times I don't do it at all, and then sometimes halfway through I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go into main character mode. Like,
wait, can I interrupt this just to figure out what's your rising? What's your sun and rising?
I knew you were going to ask that. Actually,
what a great question.
I was just thinking about how, as a Pisces, I actually really merge with people a lot of the time. So I really need to, like, you know, figure out what I actually believe and really reaffirm that. Because when I spend a lot of time with people, you know, that imposter syndrome, I suppose, can come up, and also massively comparison, unless I'm really on top of it. I can really compare myself to other people, and that can be really self-deprecating. And also I really like the way that you, Paisley, were talking about being the main character, and like, you know, is it your extroverted self that's showing up? Do you have the energy for that? Are you just feeling more introverted? You know, and then like, I could sometimes just be not the main character at a party and walk in, and then people could just be like, are you okay? Like, you're not saying anything. Is everything okay? Like, you know, dance for us, monkey. Like, what are you doing? You know, so I think just being more comfortable flowing in those spaces, and really always just coming back to no comparison, and where is that coming from, feeling into it, and then doing something that feels really positive for you. Or that's how it works for me when that comparison comes up, is just doing something that's really healing for myself, that shows me, you know, that I am, you know, incomparable.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important. It's like, in any of those times of questioning yourself is, what do I need? And that's the blessing of these tools that we've all accumulated and continue to accumulate over time. And there's two things I really want to point out here. I love that you asked about star signs. So I'm a rising Sagittarius, but like Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter are all Leo. So I'm like I need to shine. But I want to out Catherine Rowland right here is that I love that you've told me you have a database of like all your friends and what their signs are of like, hey, I remember you messaged me one day.
Friends.
Hey, yeah, you messaged me one day. Hey, Paisley, I have a database. I just need you to send me over your charts because I need to enter it in because you're also like quite an air sign person that's so organized. And yeah, I'd love you to share a bit about that too.
Oh, sure. So, Catherine, Libra Sun, Taurus Rising, Mercury in Virgo, Moon in Aquarius. Yeah, I do have a database of people's charts, both astrology and human design. I have some gene keys. I don't collect them as much. It's not as convenient. I don't know what to say about that. I just have that.
I feel like you had that before CoStar was a thing as well, because now you can just see everyone on CoStar.
For sure. But CoStar doesn't give you all the goods. I think Terrell knows all about it.
Yeah.
You want the full chart. You want all the aspects. You want the houses. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to know, like, what they. I think. Again, I do think it's really important, especially knowing your friends too, right? Like, so you can kind of figure out, okay, because immediately, Paisley, when you started talking about showing up, right, and being the star and things like that, and I was like, somewhere there's a Leo, somewhere there's somebody who needs to like that energy. I am a Taurus Sun, Aquarius rising, Pisces moon, and for the longest, it's so funny. For the longest time, I was using the wrong chart, and so I had a lot of Aries in me in my chart, and it just didn't really make sense. But since really doing the research, checking my birth chart, and all of that, it really makes sense, and you're able to understand again how you operate, how you move around. Human design is something that I really love to tap into as well. Talks a lot about the emotionality about it, and I think in this space that we're in, like, I really love talking about just how we connect with ourselves so that we can connect with the world around us. And if you know how your friends interact, and if they're in a bad mood and you really understand them, you're not going to push them or try to project your own needs on them to show up. I think, kind of like a lot of us do that. We get into our heads about our own thing, right? Looking at somebody else thinking, what are they saying about me? Or what is the experience saying about me? When it really isn't. Oftentimes it's not that heady or that deep, and it's just an understanding and being able to breathe and relax and ease into it. And I don't know, imposter syndrome is something that I don't know I hear enough about, right? Like, I don't think I hear enough about the imposter syndrome and how people navigate it and how it can really slow us down or inhibit us from moving forward. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, very important.
Just on that, I mean, not really, kind of on that, more on your Taurus Sun. Sorry, I was listening, I promise. But also, anyway.
Just say what you mean.
I will. Me and my girlfriend joke about being, this is something I feel I coined, Taurus sexual. Because I will be like into women, into a man. I'm like, what? They're a Taurus or a strong Taurus placement. I go, look, it is what it is.
That's amazing.
That's a like subtle way of me saying I find you attractive, Troy.
I love that.
I was like, there's a quality about this person. Also your Pisces moon. That really makes sense.
I love that. My Venus is in Aries too. So I'm very like, I know what I want. I get it. I got it. I take it. I'm very, Tauruses do have some, like, I think it's
there's quality.
the groundedness, like the broad
The
energy.
sensuality. Yeah. There's a food thing usually. There's like a
Oh my
food
goodness.
fixation. We jam and it works.
It works. I'm very curious. Like, I feel like a larger percentage of queer people are into astrology. You can just no broad question, but why? who has the answers here?
I don't know.
Because I literally like I knew Terrell, you were doing astrology stuff, and then Catherine, like we've been friends for a while, and you've brought up astrology so much, and then Hannah, in your actual EPK, you mentioned like your Pisces, and I'm like, I love that. That's like something people need to know about you in your like media kit. Is I was like, okay, this is amazing. There's definitely going to be some astrology coming up, and I've just always wondered like this as I started to move into queerness and started dating queer men, and like a lot of the first questions was like, oh, what are your signs? Like, and not just your sun sign, what is the rest? And I was like, because definitely something that they just go hand in hand is like, if you're queer, you like astrology. That's just is what it is. You like the same sex or something around there, and you like astrology.
I don't know. I feel like it's just I don't know. I think it's just a thing. Maybe it is the investigation into like who you are, you know. I think when you're trying to when I was younger and I really only had me to investigate, you know, I really only had like myself to really lean into, and it was very interesting to learn about my sun sign. But then when I started realizing, oh, there's so much more to this. Like you can go super in depth. Like there are people who make financial decisions off of astrology, you know, and it works. And as I've gotten further and I leaned into tarot, and it really helps. And I think that maybe that's what it is, just a curiosity about the world and who we are and how we navigate in it. I don't know.
So I'm going to do something I haven't done on the podcast before. I need to go to the toilet, so I'm taking the facilitator hat off and then leaving it to you three, and I'll be right back because I'm busting. So go for
And
it.
what is your rising sign? You left that out.
Did I?
No.
Oh, I'm
what is your rising sign though? Also, Taurus sun.
Taurus sun, Aquarius rising.
Nice.
I'm actually a Gemini rising, which is also like the character, the storyteller vibe. But then recently, when my mum was telling me her birth story, the birth story of my birth, she told me a completely different time that I was born. So I looked into that, and that appeared as if that I had a Leo rising instead of the Gemini rising. So I, still big ascendant placements, but yeah, I'm still yet to really get to the bottom of it. However, human design's been coming up a lot for me recently, so I actually keep needing to go back into that because everyone just keeps talking about it as deeply as what they do in astrology. And also, when we were talking about why is it that queer people are, potentially more into astrology or motivated by it, the word that I just kept thinking of was just because queer people are just so open, and when you're open to this, way of esoteric understanding. So yeah, just I think the openness, because if you're closed in your own sexuality, you're probably going to be closed off to, things that are not so tangible.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I think so. And I think I guess maybe that's also what I meant too with like curiosity, and you're open to different things and trying new things and seeing different perspectives. And same kind of thing though with you. I had the wrong time and I was using it for the charts, and I looked at my birth certificate and realized, and I was like, oh, this changes everything. It actually did. But yeah, I think it's always a curious thing. Me and my boyfriend first started off with, I immediately was not immediately. After a while, I was like, "What's your sign?" and this and that. And he wasn't very. It's really funny because at first he was, I enjoy astrology, but I'm not really like I would never base anything off of it. Blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, that's cute. And just I think the more that I talked about it, the more interested he got, and got into his own, started, I was like, you need to figure out what time you were born and all this stuff. And so he finally got deep into his birth chart and realized he was a Pisces. Well, he knew he was a Pisces sun, but a double Capricorn, and just going into that. And it's really fun to talk about the dynamics of that, and recognizing how you move throughout the world. And I love his queer flair. And I think you're right. I think there's just an openness to it that most queer individuals are really available for when it comes to astrology or human design, tarot, and all of that. I mean, I've always just been very much into any kind of witchy scenarios, and I've always been interested in that. So
yeah, that's another thing that I feel goes very hand in hand with queerness, is like witchiness as well. And it was really cool. So I just went to the bathroom, and my Bluetooth headphones reached. It had this like certain voyeurism going on as he's all talking. I could still hear, but I wasn't there anymore. And it made me want to ask about that actual voyeurism in your work, Hannah, around shooting people in their queerness, and especially queer intimacy. I'm curious to hear like what is your intention with that, and also what you are getting out of it. So yeah, anything around that voyeurism of that.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I do take photos outside of the intimacy erotica scene, because the reason why I love taking photos so much is always just to reflect the beauty that I can see in people back to them. So when it comes to then moving through the more intimate spaces, I definitely get much more excited about doing those types of photo shoots, just because of how deeply I, am attracted to people who are sharing love, who are same sex or just queer generally. So yeah, the voyeurism in me is definitely a strong part of my queerness, I suppose, and my art and my creativity, which also means there needs to be strong consent always with what photos you're sharing, and how much people are even willing to be photographed, or how much they're willing to do whilst you're there. And I feel like for me, I do need to spend a lot of time making people feel really comfortable with me, knowing that my intention is for art and beauty, and to just share what I see, which is just so magnificent, with them and with others. So yeah, I definitely just want to keep taking photos of queer people, and sharing that with the world. I've got like a queer ginger appreciation club photo shoot coming up, which is like a group of ginger redheads in Lismore who are also queer. So just, the minority within the minority. Also definitely an angle that I really like to be in. And yeah, just being able to capture as many different types of diverse ways of being intimate with each other, to just continue to show people that love and relating can just be so many different things, and that as long as there's just epic communication and consent, that you can just keep going up and up and up with sexuality.
Sort of like the voyeurism is a form of compersion, right? It's like your love for other people's love, especially queer love, is really brings you alive.
For sure, there's many layers.
I love that. Well, I do feel, because we're about to hit like an hour and a half mark, that I'd love to wrap up, but I would love for everyone to share a little anything for anyone that is in their marrying journey of queerness and spirituality. A bit of any advice you would love to hear in your earlier times, as well as what you are offering at the moment in those spaces that maybe someone can navigate personally towards you to actually help that journey for them.
So I started talking before I even had it. The thing I wanted to say, I was like, it's going to come. It's going to come. So, I mean, the thing that in my work with queer people specifically around, you know, coming into their authentic desire and their authentic expression has always just been around like focusing less on the labels and more on what's true for them in the moment. And specifically in my work, it's been very body focused. So what's alive in the body and being able to tell the difference between like a conditioned response and like an authentic feeling. So for me, if I was to offer advice to myself or anyone else sort of growing up and feeling like, oh, maybe I'm into the same sex or maybe I'm this or that or whatever, is to just spend time like connecting with your own body and connecting with your own pleasure and giving yourself as much permission as you can to feel what you feel and express what you want to express. And if you don't want to express that to anyone else right now, that's fine. But just to give yourself that safe space to explore and express what's true for you and to change your mind as well, which I think is a really big thing for a lot of people that I've heard. You know, they're like, oh, I think I'm this, but I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind. I don't want, you know, like that fear of being judged or pigeonholed or whatever. And you know, one thing I bring consistently is this fluidity thing. It's like, so right now I'm offering pleasure sessions, which is really an exploration into the body and into pleasure, and working with anything that comes up in the way of that. And yeah, for me, it's just really about permission and giving yourself permission, but also, you know, seeking out influencers who offer permission. So that's what I try to do in all my work, the pleasure stuff, but also, you know, my Queer and Clear podcast is all about that diversity and range of expression.
Yeah. For anyone that's listening, if they like this particular episode more than others, is like Catherine has like just a whole bunch of this episode, like in a whole different range. So because I go from topic to topic, Catherine has so much of this. So please go over there and check it out. You've had some epic guests, and I see you have another season just about to come out, right? Yeah,
I've still got to do the podcast, the interviews for that, but season 2 is in progress. Yes.
Awesome. Well, you know, this is coming out in still a few weeks, so maybe they'll like line up perfectly. So coming out tomorrow, Catherine Rowland's new season.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, I think like Catherine, especially with the changing your mind, I think that's really important to overstate, like put it out there, like change your mind as often as possible. Something that I really love too is, you know, in the space of being curious and figuring things out and working things out, there's going to be a lot of information, a lot of people telling you this way, that way, don't do, like take what works and leave what doesn't. And just move forward. You know, I think for me, I spent a lot of time not wanting to make mistakes or wanting to do things, you know, wanting to make sure it was right, and really leaning into what feels good is going to be following that yes is always going to lead you in the right direction. It might not be the direction that other people want you to go in because of their own thing, but if you're following your intuitive guidance and you're following those things and you feel like it's a yes the whole way, it's going to lead you to the place where you need to go. And so again, you know, take what works for you, leave what doesn't, and change your mind when it stops working for you. I offer tarot guidance, and what I love about this is that the way that I read tarot is from a very present space. energy. And so a lot of the feedback that I get from people who come and see me after reading is, I feel very validated. Oh, this is what I was thinking. Oh, now I knew it was going to be, I knew this. And it's like, if I can help anybody, I want to help people trust themselves. I want to help people trust them, trust their intuition, so that when they're taking those steps, when they're making changes. I mean, I've changed my life so many different times, and I've had to really stand in my own space and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. So that's what I really love to offer. And as I'm moving forward with my coaching practice, and it's a container of just, learning how to use the laws of the universe, and understanding that your mindset and your energy are the most palpable, the most intermixable, the most powerful thing that you can use to create the change. So I also offer those kind of containers, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, just that being there of presence and delivering something for people to go, yeah, I knew that is so important for giving people that foundation of trust, especially, yeah, when it comes to people that are on this journey of queerness that maybe aren't fully able to trust themselves because society to a certain degree still says that's wrong. So then not being able to trust your inner body becomes. So yeah, to give that clarity to people is beautiful. Thank you.
Cool. Well, firstly, I just wanted to say how exciting it is that there are people like us around to be sort of queer figures for younger people, because I definitely had no queer mentors or people to look up to actually strive towards it all. So firstly, I'm just really happy that I know that some people who are on this path will actually be able to just gain access to people who look like they're on a similar journey that they want to be on. So that's just fucking incredible, hands down. And yeah, just love what both of you said, because I just deeply resonate with strengthening your own inner authority so that you really know what's best for you, and really practicing that intuitive space within yourself so that you're making decisions truly based on yourself, and not, especially these days, the media or from somewhere, like Catherine was saying, like, where in your body are you feeling this? Like, are you feeling fear? Where is that coming from? Why? Like, really being able to be in tune with your body and be in tune with your own spiritual aspect. And if that means giving your spirit, like, for me, it's like when I'm connected to spirit, I see like one burning candle inside of me. And so that's the place I can go and, take questions to, or sit in thought with. And yeah, also just practicing failing, failing is a really big one that I have really just come to terms with, that I need to do a lot more. Is just practicing seeing what happens when you do fail, especially because we have so much ingrained capitalism and things like that inside of us that, people probably even think that with regards to their sexuality, like, I have to get it right. I have to get it right. It's like, well, you get it wrong, what happens? Nothing. You still have maybe some mediocre or great sex with someone, so yeah. So
Beautiful. And do you have any offerings you'd like to plug right now?
Oh yeah, the plugging of the offerings. Wow. Well, with regards to being in touch with yourself, it's always really beautiful to have Sacred Fire with you when you are doing whatever your modalities are. And what better way to hold Sacred Fire than the good lighter? Why use a cheap plastic lighter that looks like crap when you could have this beautiful brass one infused with magical crystals on your altar? So the good lighter always, and I am not quite at my being able to really offer my services of breath work out there too much right now, just because the type of breath work that it is really deep. It's rebirthing, and it has a lot to do with holding space for people's traumas and things like that. So I'm really trying to make sure that I have deep integrity with the work before I offer it to people. But I do life coaching, which is awesome. So if people do want to have a chat about anything that they feel they resonate with me around, that's awesome. And if you want to get some fucking sexy nudes, then hit me up. You know I enjoy it just as much as you do. So yeah, always down to take pics, make little videos, discuss creative content with anyone, and just have a soul, heart-centered convo.
Epic. Yeah, I'm such a slut for like queer nude imagery. So please, everyone go do it. So there's more content on your page that I can go check out.
You know I've been frothing to take your photo for ages, babe. You know that.
All right, next time I'm up in Byron, it's happening, which should be soon. But yes, thank you to the three of you for jumping on. Anyone that's listening, I'll have all their social media and website and everywhere that you need to contact them in the bio, in the information, in the wherever that this platform that you're listening on is. But yeah, I'm really grateful that you three chose to show up at all different times in the world and to have this conversation, to show your vulnerability, to show your imposter syndrome, to show the ways that you shine, and to show us your astrology charts. You know, that's all very vulnerable work there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
These legends.
There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious Conversation. Curious Conversation. Nowadays, there are still girls and boys whose curiosity leads them to strange places.
What a curious call. I can't